Russian shelling in the liberated city of Kherson has killed 15 people, according to Ukrainian officials. Authorities have begun evacuating civilians from the city, including children and hospital patients. The latest attack comes as authorities race to repair damage to critical infrastructure destroyed by Russian airstrikes earlier this week. Well, the damage knocked out power to much of the country. Authorities have restored it in some areas, but more than 6 million people are still without heat or electricity. Analysts say Russia is seeking to demoralize Ukrainians over the harsh winter months. Ukraine's president has called on the nation to endure. Well, Russian President Vladimir Putin on Friday met with mothers of soldiers who have been killed in Russia's invasion of Ukraine. In a staged meeting with carefully selected women from across Russia, Putin said he shared their pain, but that their sons had not died in vain. There has been growing protest across Russia from mothers of young men who are being forcibly recruited and sent to the front, often lacking training and equipment. Let's get across to DW's Russia analyst Konstantin Eggert. Konstantin, what do you think Putin is hoping to achieve with this carefully orchestrated meeting?
Well, carefully orchestrated is one way of putting it. Actually, at least half of those 17 women that were present are either people with basically minor state bureaucrats or members of the pro-Kremlin movements that are essentially financed by the state to boost support for Vladimir Putin. So the aim is very clear, to show popular support and actually the mother's support for Putin's policies, for Putin's war in Ukraine. Actually, there are doubts about whether all these women actually have their sons at the front. And definitely the fact that only a few clips of the meeting have emerged, very, very little footage, I would say, also shows that this was indeed very carefully orchestrated and designed not to elicit any other feelings, but essentially support for the president and respect for his position. But he didn't say anything. It was everything he said was pretty banal and sometimes actually bordering on insensitive, at least to one mother. He said, well, you see, lots of people die from vodka, your son didn't. And this is not the kind of thing you expect probably to hear at such a meeting.
So it's meant to be a show of support, but how worried do you think the Kremlin actually is about what people think of this mobilization?
Look, we can't get into the mind of the collective Kremlin, but I think so far the protests were rather centered, the mothers and fathers protests were rather centered not on the war itself, that men are going to kill in a country they know little about, people that didn't do anything bad to them. But it's rather about lack of training, lack of food, lack of conditions in the barracks. So it is rather about the conditions of war than peace. So far, I think the Kremlin has not that much to fear from popular movements inside Russia. They are so far not contesting the fact of war. They're contesting the conditions for the mobilized.
Okay, thank you so much for that update. That's our Russia analyst, Konstantin Eggert.